I froze with the bouquet still in my hands, a ribbon cutting into my palm. The flowers were meant for him, a small welcome on his first day. He looked past them, past me, and said, "Jessica Ward, your time here is over." No hello, no why. Just the sentence that pulls the floor out from under a person. I didn't drop the bouquet. I didn't beg. I stood there long enough to feel the sting spread from my throat to my eyes. Then I nodded once and let my face go still. The receptionist stared. A junior from my team half rose from a chair and sat back down. It felt like the lobby itself held its breath, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. I tucked the bouquet under my arm and walked to my desk. In the years I'd been here, I had done the messy, invisible work. The kinds of things no ribbon cutting ever shows. Building vendor trust one late-night call at a time. Pulling a failing rollout out of a nosedive. Training new hires who were now managers. It had cost me more than a few birthdays and a marriage, but I told myself it mattered because the results were real. Because I was building something that would outlast whatever name sat on the corner office. Apparently, that name decided I was disposable before he knew where the bathrooms were. I packed slowly, ritual more than necessity. A family photo. A chipped mug with our first big client's logo. A stack of handwritten notes from the team. Thank yous and jokes, small anchors that had kept me honest on days when the job turned heavy. I placed the bouquet on top of the box like a strange, polite gravestone. People watched. Some mouthed, "What happened?" I gave the smallest shake of my head. Don't. Not here. In the elevator, it hit me in waves. Humiliation, then anger, then a sharp, clean focus that surprised me. On the walk to the car, the anger faded, but the focus stayed, firing me on his first day, before a single one-on-one, before review, before even asking what was in motion. He had no clue. 3 days earlier, I had sat in a glass-walled conference room across from Sable and Hart's general counsel and operations chief. It was the final pass on a supply agreement a year in the making, one that would underpin our expansion for the next 5. We had cleared pricing, timelines, logistics headaches you only notice once trucks start rolling. Then their counsel slid a final page across the table. "A key person clause," she said. "We've been burned before." My name was there in black ink. Project Director of Record. Continuity of leadership on our side wasn't a courtesy. It was a condition. If I left the company or was reassigned without mutual written consent, Sable and Hart could terminate immediately. No penalty to them, and we would forfeit the onboarding credit line we were counting on to finance the ramp. I knew why they wanted it. I also knew we needed the deal. So we negotiated. Tight timelines, limited carve-outs, clarity on what reassignment meant. And then we signed. I left that room with 2 things. Their trust and a document that made me, in effect, the hinge the door swung on. I didn't tell anyone at the office beyond the usual approvals. The red lines were in legal, the signatures were in the deal room, and the clause was in the version control system that pings whenever anyone alters a comma. It wasn't a secret. It was just something you only see if you look. He hadn't looked. At home, I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at the bouquet until the water beaded at the stems. I thought of calling my mother, who would have said, "Come over, we'll make tea. We'll watch something dumb until we laugh." I thought of my ex-husband's last accusation. "You love that job more than you love breathing," and wondered if he'd feel vindicated. My phone buzzed with messages from the team. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't going to run back waving a document like a victory flag. I wasn't going to text the new CEO a list of reasons he'd made a mistake. A person who believes power is a stage prop doesn't hear reason. They only hear applause or silence. I gave him silence. I opened my laptop. I forwarded nothing. I printed nothing. I wrote down in a private notebook everything that had happened from the moment I walked into the lobby to the moment I closed my front door. Names, words, small details I knew memory would blur by morning. Then I closed the notebook and made dinner. Underneath the embarrassment was a different feeling, One I hadn't expected. Relief. Not relief at losing a job I had bled for, but relief at finally seeing the truth of the place I worked. Some people wear their values like a uniform, others only when the weather suits them. Today had been a hard, clean forecast. I slept badly. Dreams full of hallways and locked doors. Morning light sharpened everything. I brewed coffee and, for lack of anything else to do, trimmed the bouquet stems and moved them to a heavier vase. I had given them for good optics. I kept them now to remind myself of something better. Intention carries weight even when it's ignored. I didn't need to make the first move. The company would. Sable and Hart's onboarding packet triggered automatically once all signatures were verified. It included a welcome note, access credentials, and a polite reminder of the key person clause with the line, "We value continuity. If circumstances change, notify us immediately." Legal received the same packet. Finance received the draw schedule tied to that same contract. I poured my coffee and watched the steam rise. Somewhere, in an office with a view and a nameplate not yet screwed straight, a notification pinged. Then, another, and another. By the time I set the mug down, my phone was face down on the table and the vase was steady in the center, a small, stubborn flame of color in a quiet kitchen. I didn't touch either. Across town, the receptionist would have stood, heels tapping, folders pressed to her chest. She would have knocked once and not waited. The door would have opened. His his gatekeeper, stormed inside. "Sir, you need to see this." When my phone rang that morning, I let it buzz until the screen went dark again. Then it lit up a second time. Same number, our company's main line. I knew if I answered, a floodgate would open, and I wasn't ready. I sipped my coffee, deliberately slow, and tried to focus on the ordinary things. The sound of the neighbor's lawnmower starting, the faint drip of the faucet I'd been meaning to fix for months, the steady hum of my refrigerator. Real life goes on, I reminded myself. Even when you're thrown out of the life you built. By the third call, curiosity got the better of me. I swiped. "Jessica," a clipped voice said. It wasn't the CEO. It was his secretary, Marta. For as long as I'd been there, she had been the one to keep the chaos from spilling out of that corner office. Always professional, rarely emotional. But today, I heard something new in her voice. Panic. "You need to come in," she said. No greeting, no pleasantries. "There's an issue." I let a beat pass. "I don't work there anymore, remember?" "Jessica, listen." She lowered her voice like someone might overhear through the phone. "The Sable and Hart contract is unraveling. Legal flagged your name. They can't move forward without you. Mr. Cole..." She caught herself, then corrected. "Mr. Ward. That's what he's calling himself now. He doesn't understand. He thought it was a formality. It's not. He needs you back in that chair before this blows up in his face." Her words tumbled quickly, each one heavier than the last. I set the mug down before it slipped from my hand. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even smug. But what I felt instead was an ache in my chest, the kind you get when someone finally admits what you already knew. That all those nights, all those sacrifices weren't invisible after all. They mattered. They mattered so much that the deal could not exist without me. "I'm not going to rush over just because he made a mistake," I said finally, surprised at how calm I sounded. "He fired me, Marta." On his first day, without so much as a conversation, silence stretched on the other end. Then, carefully, she said, "I understand. But please, think about it. The board is already circling. They won't tolerate losing Sable and Hart." I ended the call without making a promise. My pulse hammered in my ears. The rest of the morning blurred. I tried reading, but the words floated. I went for a walk, but every face I passed looked like it might stop me and ask why I wasn't at the office. By lunchtime, I had no appetite, only a gnawing question. Did I want to save them? Because I could. One call, one meeting, and the deal would steady again. But that also meant stepping back into the same halls where I'd been dismissed like a spare part. I didn't owe them that. Still, I owed myself clarity. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Nicole, an old colleague who had moved to another firm but still kept an ear to the ground. If anyone knew what was really happening inside, it would be her. She picked up on the second ring. Jessica? Oh my God, I heard. Are you okay? I'm fine, I lied. But tell me straight, how bad is it? She didn't hesitate. It's bad. Word spread fast that you were out. Sable and Hart apparently called their counsel twice this morning asking for confirmation. When they didn't get it, they froze the contract. The CEO, the new one. He tried to bluff in front of the board, said he was restructuring. But someone pointed out the clause. He looked like a deer in headlights. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. They'll try to pull you back in, Nicole continued, her tone softening. But if you go, make sure it's on your terms. Don't let them sweep this under the rug. They need you more than you need them right now. Her words echoed after we hung up. On my terms. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I opened my laptop again. My inbox was flooded. Messages from teammates, from legal, even from accounting. Most were polite, urgent, professional. A few carried a note of desperation. But one stood out. It was from Marta again. Just 4 words. Please call me tonight. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened the scanned contract. Line by line, I traced the clause that now held the entire company hostage. My name wasn't just ink on a page. It was leverage. Proof that my work, my presence, had weight. And for the first time since being fired, I felt the balance shift. Not in their favor. In mine. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, watching the city lights blink on through the window. Somewhere in that glittering grid, he was pacing, scrambling, trying to stitch together authority he hadn't earned. And somewhere beneath him, the people who once looked to me for direction were waiting, uncertain, whispering in the halls. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about respect, dignity, about whether years of loyalty could be erased by a careless decision or whether I would finally demand what I was worth. I picked up my phone. Not to call Marta. Not yet. But to draft a message. 7 words, nothing more. We can talk. My conditions, not his I didn't hit send. Not that night. But the words sat there on the screen, glowing back at me. A reminder that for once, I wasn't the one waiting for permission. For once, the power was mine. I stared at the unsent text for a long time, then finally tapped send. We can talk. My conditions, not his. Marta called within a minute. What conditions? She asked, voice low like she'd stepped into an empty corridor. I want a written reinstatement retroactive to the day I was fired, I said. Full authority over Sable and Hart with no interference. I report directly to legal on this one, not to the CEO. If anyone tries to reassign me without the client's written consent, the contract stands and I walk with severance intact. Also, a non-retaliation clause. She was quiet, taking it down. I'll get legal and HR in a room. Can you come in? I'll come as a visitor, I said. No badges until I sign. When I pushed through the lobby doors, the air had the charged stillness of a storm about to break. Faces lifted. Conversations clipped off mid-sentence. The bouquet I'd left yesterday sat on the receptionist's shelf in a too small vase, petals already soft at the edges. I kept my eyes on the front desk. Miss Ward, the receptionist said, relief flickering across her face. They're expecting you. Security issued a visitor sticker like I was any other outsider. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I caught reflections of my own expression in the glass. Calm on the surface, something coiled beneath. Marta met me at a conference room. She looked like the kind of tired that comes from trying to hold a building together with a roll of tape. General counsel is inside, she said. HR2. Legal had sent their senior, Amir Patel, gray at the temples, reading glasses perched on his head. HR's director, Elise, sat beside him with a folder already open. No CEO. Jessica, Amir said, standing. Thank you for coming. I'm here for the contract, I replied, taking the seat closest to the door, and to make the boundaries clear. He nodded, slid a draft across the table. Reinstatement letter, retroactive. Addendum assigning you sole authority over the account for the duration of onboarding. Non-retaliation language here. We removed reasonable where it could weaken your autonomy. I read every line, pen uncapped. Strike subject to business needs, I said, tapping a sentence. That phrase is a loophole. Amir scratched it out without argument. Elise added a sticky note. The red lines began to feel less like leverage and more like scaffolding. Plain, structural, not dramatic. Necessary. The door opened. The new CEO walked in, all polished impatience. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the papers. What are we doing? He asked, too loudly. Repairing what you broke, I said, not raising my voice. His jaw worked. We don't negotiate personnel decisions with employees. You do when a client has a key person clause, Amir said. Even. We're exposed. The CEO took a step closer to the table. I'm not comfortable with this reporting line. She should report to me. You're not listed anywhere on the Sable and Hart governance grid, I replied. They don't know you? They do know me. That's the point. He glanced at Elise, looking for an ally. She kept her eyes on the folder. This isn't personal, I added. It's continuity. Either we honor what we signed or we admit we agreed to terms we didn't read. Amir slid him a copy of the executed contract, a yellow tab marking the clause. He stared at it, then at me. The posture of a man who had expected the room to bend and found it stubbornly square. Fine, he said, but the word was brittle. Sign it. I will, I said. After one more thing. A joint email to Sable and Hart from legal, confirming my status and clarifying no changes will be made without their consent. It goes out before I step into any call. Amir nodded. Agreed. The CEO's mouth thinned. We are not apologizing to a vendor. They're not a vendor, I said. They're our partner, and today our lifeline. The room held its breath. For a moment, I thought he might derail the whole thing out of pride. Instead, he gave a tight, performative smile and took a seat, as if choosing to be magnanimous. We worked through the document line by line. When I finished, I slid the pen back and pushed the papers toward Amir. That language I can live with. Marta reappeared at the door, a pale edge to her complexion. Sorry, she said. This can't wait. The CEO exhaled. What now? She handed Amir a printout. Sable and Hart's counsel forwarded a screenshot. Someone posted on the company LinkedIn. Day 1, reshaping the team, cutting dead weight. No more passengers. It went live half an hour ago. All eyes moved to the CEO. A red blotch crept up his neck. That was a scheduled post, he said. Generic, it wasn't about anyone. It doesn't matter what it was about, I said. It's how it reads. And it went up while their legal team was requesting assurance about leadership stability. Amir pinched the bridge of his nose. We'll delete it now and acknowledge the misstep in the email. Softly. Then we confirm continuity. The CEO bristled. We are not admitting fault on a public platform. Then we admit it privately to the only people who can tear up our contract without penalty. Amir replied, voice calm but steel-threaded. Choose your pride or your runway. He said nothing. The room heard the choice anyway. I drafted the body of the message. Concise, unambiguous, no flourishes. Continuity confirmed, authority clarified, commitment reaffirmed. Amir read it, nodded once, and hit send from legal's account. A copy landed in my inbox seconds later, cold proof that the ground had shifted. Credentials? I asked. Limited access. Deal room only. Elise slid a temporary badge across the table. Expires in 72 hours. IT will restore your email with legal hold protections. I tucked the badge into my pocket. At the threshold, I paused. One more thing, I said, turning to the CEO. When I walk into that client call, I represent all of us. You don't have to like how we got here, but don't make me defend us and you at the same time. He held my gaze, and for a flicker, I saw the smallest crack. Uncertainty, or maybe recognition. Then it was gone. Do your job, he said. I always have, I answered. As I stepped into the hallway, my phone vibrated. An email preview from Sable and Hart's counsel. Thank you for the clarification. Before we proceed, there's one more concern we need to address. I didn't open it yet. I let the subject line sit there like a held note and felt the room behind me grow distant. Whatever it was, it had to be faced. And now, finally, on terms I could live with. I didn't open the email until I was back in my car, door shut, silence around me. My hands trembled slightly as I tapped the screen. Before we proceed, we need to address leadership stability. We understand Miss Ward's authority is intact. However, we have concerns regarding public communications that suggest internal instability. Kindly confirm who speaks for your company during this transition. I exhaled. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the company's credibility. One clumsy LinkedIn post had turned a straightforward onboarding into a negotiation about trust. I drafted a reply in my head while staring at the steering wheel. Clear, concise, professional. No emotion. Just reassurance that I was their point of contact. But I knew better than to send it myself. It had to come from legal, stamped with authority, copied to the board if necessary. Otherwise, it would look like I was patching holes without backing. So I drove home, laptop bag beside me, the visitor badge still clipped to my coat pocket. By evening, the company had already issued an internal memo. Jessica Ward reinstated as project director for Sable and Hart. All communications to run through her office. The language was dry, corporate, but the effect rippled. My phone buzzed with quiet congratulations from people who had kept their distance after I was fired. A few messages carried more honesty. We're relieved. It's been chaos here. That word, chaos, stuck with me. The next morning, I logged in to find my inbox scrubbed, a clean slate. IT had archived everything from before the firing, they said, for compliance. It felt like my history had been boxed up, sealed away where I couldn't touch it. I made a note in my private notebook. Day 1 back. Email sanitized. At 10 a.m., I joined the call with Sable and Hart. Their counsel appeared first, face unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. Then their COO, measured and brisk. Miss Ward, the counsel said. Glad you're with us. We need clarity on 2 points before we continue. 1, public communications. 2, executive oversight. I kept my tone steady. On communications, the post was poorly worded and has been removed. The board has confirmed all external messaging on this account runs through legal and myself. On oversight, Sable and Hart's contract names me as sole negotiator. That hasn't changed. The COO leaned closer to the camera. And if it does? Then the contract terminates and you're free to walk away without penalty, I said, reciting the clause word for word. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the counsel nodded slowly. That matches our understanding. The tension eased a notch. Not much, but enough to move forward. After the call, I felt a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. I hadn't won anything permanent, only bought breathing room. But sometimes, in business and in life, breathing room is the difference between collapse and recovery. Around noon, Marta slipped into the conference room where I was reviewing logistics charts. She closed the door behind her. He's furious, she whispered. I didn't need to ask who. Because I'm back? Because you're back with more authority than he expected. He's been pacing, calling board members, trying to frame it as temporary. But the board's focus is the contract. They don't want headlines about a failed expansion. I leaned back in my chair. So they'll keep me in place until the deal closes. After that? She hesitated. After that, it depends how many allies you've built in the meantime. Her words sank in. This wasn't over. It was only the opening round. That afternoon, I walked the halls deliberately, visiting teams I hadn't seen in weeks. Some greeted me warmly, relief in their eyes. Others avoided eye contact, clearly unsure where loyalties should lie. I didn't press. Trust takes time to rebuild, especially in places where fear has been seeded. By evening, I was drained. At home, I reheated leftovers, set my notebook on the table, and wrote down everything. The Sable and Hart call, Marta's warning, the way people looked at me in the office. I needed the record, both for myself and for whatever might come next. Because I could feel it already. He wasn't done. He had made a decision on his first day that nearly cost the company millions. Pride wouldn't let him swallow that. Pride rarely does. And pride is dangerous when paired with power. As I closed the notebook, I thought back to something my father once told me when I was a teenager, struggling with a part-time job under a bad manager. Some people don't care if the house burns down, as long as they can watch you run out first. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now, I understood. The CEO didn't care if the company took damage, not as long as he could prove a point about control. And if I stayed in his way, he'd try to move me. Not by firing me again. He'd learned that lesson. But by smaller cuts. Whispered doubts. Manufactured mistakes. The kind of sabotage that leaves no fingerprints. I set the fork down. Appetite gone. The message from Sable and Hart had been handled. The contract was steady. For now. But the real storm wasn't outside. It was inside those walls, in the office where he sat planning his next move. And I knew, with a certainty that left a chill in my chest, that this wasn't just a battle for a contract anymore. It was a battle for survival. Sable and Hart set a final sign-off for the following afternoon. One call, then a site visit the next week to kick off. It should have been routine. I spent the morning tightening the checklist. Handover notes, logistics milestones, an FAQ for their operations lead. At noon, my screen flashed with a new message from their counsel. Can you confirm Schedule B is your final payment schedule? I frowned. Schedule B was locked. We had settled the milestone amounts 2 weeks ago. I opened the attachment they'd forwarded back. Our letterhead, my name on the footer, but the numbers were wrong. The deposit was lower, the second milestone pushed out, and a new performance holdback appeared like a stowaway sentence. I hadn't touched it. I pulled the file history from our deal room. Versions don't lie. The official V14_final_signed showed the correct amounts, last edited by me and Amir from legal. The one Sable and Hart received was V14_final_signed 1.pdf, uploaded from a shared admin account 37 minutes earlier. Same file name, different hash, and a one-line changelog. Minor formatting. I took a screenshot of the metadata and walked straight to legal. Amir looked up as I entered. What is it? I put both versions in front of him. They got a counterfeit Schedule B. He scanned, then swore under his breath. Who has access to the shared admin account? IT says only 2 offices, Executive Suite and Finance, I said. Timestamp matches when the CEO was in the building. Marta slipped in behind me, closing the door softly. You're not going to like this, she said. He told procurement to update the schedule before they lock us in. He thinks the original terms are too generous. Amir's jaw set. He can't unilaterally change executed terms. If Sable and Hart thinks we're moving the goalposts, they walk and keep their leverage. I dialed Sable and Hart's counsel and put the call on speaker. You received an unauthorized document, I said, voice steady. Please discard it. Legal will send a certified copy of the executed schedule from our repository, and we're initiating an internal review of access controls. The counsel didn't bother hiding his irritation. We negotiated in good faith, Ms. Ward. This looks like bad faith. I understand, I said. Give me 2 hours. You'll have a governance letter signed by our board chair reaffirming the original terms and my authority. If I can't deliver that, we accept your right to terminate. A pause. Then, 2 hours. We hung up. Amir was already drafting. I'll get the chair on, he said, reaching for the phone. The CEO arrived without knocking, eyes flicking to the papers. Status? Amir didn't look up. We're correcting an unauthorized change. The CEO's smile was thin. There's nothing unauthorized about optimizing cash flow. You altered an executed schedule, I said. That's not optimization. It's breach. He shrugged like we were haggling over lunch. They'll accept the new timing. They need us as much as we need them. Not with a key person clause and a termination right, Amir said. And not when the edit came from an account controlled by your floor. Color rose in the CEO's face. Are you accusing me? I'm stating facts, Amir replied, and I'm calling the board chair. The next 90 minutes were a sprint. Amir secured the chair's signature on a governance letter that did 3 things in plain language. Reaffirmed the original Schedule B, confirmed my sole authority per contract, and placed all future document control for this deal under legal, not the executive office. IT produced a log of the upload path for the counterfeit file and locked the shared admin account. HR placed procurement's update instruction under hold. It was clean, dull process work, the kind that saves companies. We sent the package to Sable and Hart at 1:46 p.m. Their counsel replied 3 minutes later, received. Proceeding with final sign-off as scheduled, the COO added a single line. Appreciate the clarity. When the door finally closed, the room exhaled. The CEO didn't. He pointed at me. You went over my head. No, I said. I followed the contract you didn't read. He took a step forward, then stopped, gaze snagging on Amir, who was already dialing again. Board's convening in 20, Amir said mildly. They want to understand how an optimization nearly cost us our largest expansion. We filed into the boardroom with our paper trail, the screenshots, the access log, the governance letter. The chair listened, asked precise questions, then turned to the CEO. Did you authorize an edited schedule after execution? He chose the worst answer. I authorized a sensible adjustment. And did you route it through legal? Silence. Then, no. There are moments when rooms decide. You can feel it, like air pressure dropping before a storm. The chair set down her pen. Effective immediately, you are removed from all matters related to this account and placed on administrative leave pending an external review of document controls and compliance. HR will follow up. He laughed once, disbelieving, then looked at me as if I'd pulled a trapdoor. For a breath, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered the LinkedIn post, the lobby, the bouquet in a too small vase. Pride had done the rest. He left without another word. We signed with Sable and Hart that afternoon. No champagne, no confetti. Just quiet handshakes on a clean call, a calendar invite for a site visit, and a shared understanding that trust had been dented and then repaired with work, not speeches. Weeks later, the external review concluded. The CEO resigned to pursue other opportunities. In a 3-sentence memo. There was no press. We didn't need a headline. We needed competence. My role was made permanent. Director of Client Delivery, reporting to the COO. Titles matter less than the levers that come with them. I used mine to fix the plumbing. Strict version control. Approval matrices that didn't bend under charm. A simple rule that anything sent to a client had 2 pairs of eyes and an audit trail. I reopened one-on-ones with the teams that had gone quiet and told them what I wished someone had told me earlier. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're commitments to the work and to yourself. On my first day in the new office, Marta brought in a plant. Sturdy leaves, low maintenance. No bouquets, she said, a small smile. They look nice in the lobby and wilt by morning. I set the plant by the window and thought about the moment I'd stood frozen, clutching flowers for a man who didn't bother with a hello. I'd thought I was powerless then. Turns out, I'd only forgotten where my power actually lived. In the paper I'd earned, the people I'd shown up for, the standards I refused to lower, even when it would have been easier to disappear. It wasn't revenge. It was repair. And that was enough. During a quick sync with the CEO's son, my phone buzzed face down on the glass table. I glanced at the notification bar as I reached for my coffee. Unknown number, one line. Don't react. He is recording you. I kept my hand steady. No flinch, no breath caught in my throat. I'm Lauren, product director. 15 years into building the kind of resilience that doesn't blink when knives come wrapped in compliments. The conference room hummed with the polite white noise of the air system, the scent of lemongrass cleaner and fresh toner. He lounged in the chair opposite me like it was a throne he'd inherited. Elbows wide, watch face tilted toward me, a faint red dot pulsing along the bezel like a heartbeat. Relax, he said, smirking. This is just a temperature check. He didn't open a laptop. He didn't bring notes. He adjusted his cufflinks and placed his phone vertically against a water carafe, camera side angled up. The light glare on the screen hid everything except the tiny circle at the top. A new pen sat on the table. Shiny, branded, placed exactly between us like a centerpiece. The cap had a pinhole. I poured water, as if my attention lived somewhere else. I've taught younger managers how to observe. Noise, placement, posture. The pen didn't belong to our office kits. The watch's mic port was uncovered. The phone was angled to capture my face, not his. And the text, whoever sent it, had either saved me or wanted to see if I could save myself. He smiled in the way men do when they assume you need them. Lauren, I hear you're strong-willed. A pause, inviting me to fill it. I didn't. Silence is a tool, a scalpel if you hold it without shaking. I'm thorough, I said, matching the temperature of the room. It keeps our clients. He leaned in like we were co-conspirators, lowering his voice. I also hear you've been difficult with transitions. Resistance to change. The word hovered in the air between us. Code 4, you didn't applaud when I cut head count to impress Dad. A tap vibrated through the table, his finger against the phone. The camera lens caught a flare of light. The pen glinted. I imagined the version of me they wanted to capture. Defensive, emotional, unprofessional. Clip a sentence, splice a sigh, title it Insubordination. Easy to edit a villain when you already wrote the script. Change goes faster when it's rational, I answered, folding my hands. We can talk through the rationale. He grinned wider like I'd stepped into a trap. Great. Let's talk about why you refused to ship V4.2 last week. I had emails, risk reports, a QA list as long as a receipt, security flags on the payment module that would have torched us in the press. He knew it. But what mattered today wasn't truth. It was tape. I pictured chopped sound bites, refused ship last week. I pictured my jaw clenched, brows drawn, a woman who couldn't collaborate. I documented my reasons in the release notes. I said evenly, "Do you have them pulled up?" He blinked. No laptop. No notes. Let's stay high level. I stayed quiet, counting the seconds. People who expect your panic get nervous when they don't get it. He shifted. The watch's red dot flashed again. My phone buzzed in my lap. Don't give him adjectives, only facts. The unknown number again. My pulse chased itself, then slowed. Whoever this was knew the game. He drummed his fingers. Look, you've done a lot here. But we're entering a new era. I need leaders who can be aligned. Aligned with what? I asked. With me. He said it without a smile now. The room felt smaller. I thought of my team. Sleepless nights, sticky notes, laughter over cold pizza. Thought of all the people his pivot would discard like receipts. He raised his phone. "Just checking the time," he said, angling it, the lens catching my reflection. "So, are you willing to commit to my timeline and the cultural changes I'm implementing?" A perfect close-ended question. No context, no constraints, yes or no, and either answer would hang me in the edit. I reached for the branded pen and turned it idly between my fingers, as if curious about the logo. The cap clicked once. Inside, something rattled. Too heavy for ink, too loose for spring. I set it down gently, face toward me. "I commit to any timeline that doesn't compromise our client's financial data," I said, "and to any cultural change that doesn't punish integrity." He let the silence stretch, then chuckled without warmth. "You're principled." "Fact," I said, "not adjective." A tiny crease appeared between his eyebrows. He wasn't getting what he came for. He pivoted. "Okay then." Off the record, he pointed at the phone and almost theatrically locked the screen. The watch's dot still pulsed. "Lauren, people say you've been hard on certain colleagues. Some feel unsafe raising ideas. That's not our vibe." The word unsafe landed like a grenade. It's HR's favorite ghost. Impossible to hold. Devastating to chase. Frame a woman as unsafe and watch her drown trying to disprove a shadow. "Which colleagues?" I asked. "I don't name names," he said, performing benevolence. "I protect my people." "Then protect them with specifics," I replied. "Dates, incidents, witnesses." He stared, then smiled again. Bigger, brighter, faker. "We're good here." We weren't, but I nodded, calm like a clear lake that hides a riptide. He stood, shaking my hand too long, the watch angled at my wrist. "Great energy," he said. "Let's keep this between us." No need to loop in Dad yet. He left the pen behind. In the hallway, chatter swelled and the world felt normal again, fluorescent and busy. I walked to my desk the long way, passing the framed mission statement, "We build trust," and tried not to laugh. The unknown number texted once more. Conference room, ceiling grill. Corner camera, do not touch the pen. Too late. I slid the pen into an envelope and labeled it with the meeting time, then drafted an email to myself with bullet points of everything he'd asked and everything I'd said. Facts only. Attach the envelope photo. Breathe. At 4:12 p.m., my phone began to vibrate across the desk. Unknown numbers, no voicemail. Again. A swarm. By 5:03 p.m., 83 missed calls. The first thing I did when I got home that night was lock the door and place the pen on my kitchen counter like it was a live wire. I poured myself a glass of water, but my hands shook too much to drink. 83 missed calls from an unknown number. No messages, no voicemails. Just the repeated demand to answer. I hadn't. Something told me the silence was safer. I kept staring at the pen. It looked harmless enough. Just a black branded corporate pen, the kind they hand out at trade shows. But inside it, I'd felt something shift, something metallic. And the text had warned me. Do not touch the pen. Too late. I needed proof. I pulled out a small toolkit I used for fixing eyeglasses and carefully pried off the cap. A thin wire, coiled and taped, slipped out, attached to a tiny chip smaller than a fingernail. My breath caught. It wasn't just a pen. It was a microphone. I leaned back against the counter, my pulse in my throat. Whoever texted me had been right. But then, who were they? A whistleblower? A colleague who pitied me? Or maybe someone playing a deeper game? I didn't know. What I did know was that the CEO's son had planted surveillance equipment in a company meeting and was trying to bait me into saying something he could twist. I slid the chip into a plastic sandwich bag and tucked it inside a cookie tin high in the cupboard, away from curious eyes. Then I powered off my phone completely. Those 83 calls rattled me more than the microphone. Not knowing why someone was so desperate to reach me felt worse than knowing I'd been recorded. Sleep that night was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the meeting in my head. His smirk, his choice of words, the way he kept tapping the phone screen. Unsafe. That word echoed the loudest. They weren't just trying to frame me for insubordination. They were building a case that I was unstable, unfit for leadership. And with his father as CEO, it wouldn't take much to bury me. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. My colleagues trickled in with coffee cups and tired smiles, unaware of the storm brewing above their heads. I opened my laptop, plugged in my headphones, and started typing notes about the meeting. Every detail mattered. Placement of objects, his phrasing, the text messages, the pen. I even described the faint pulse on his watch because in court, or in HR, those small details could matter. Around 9:30, my manager, Helen, walked by. She paused at my desk. "Rough night?" she asked gently. I forced a smile. "Didn't sleep much." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Just be careful around Ryan." Ryan, the CEO's son, so I wasn't imagining it. She didn't elaborate, but her tone carried weight. My stomach tightened. Maybe she knew more than she could say aloud. By noon, an email hit my inbox. Subject, feedback session follow-up. It was from Ryan. He thanked me for my time and openness, then wrote a line that chilled me. "I appreciate your honesty about being resistant to leadership change. Let's keep building from there." I hadn't said that, not even close, but it was exactly the kind of admission that could be twisted in a performance review. My throat went dry. He was already rewriting the narrative. At lunch, I sat in my car in the parking lot, phone turned back on, scrolling through the unknown calls, all from the same number. I hesitated, then dialed it. Straight to voicemail. No greeting, no name, just the robotic operator. I hung up, exhaling hard. Who sends you a warning like that, then disappears? When I returned to my desk, there was an envelope waiting for me. No name, no handwriting on the outside, just the company's internal mail sticker. I glanced around, heart pounding, then slid it open under the desk. Inside was a single photo. A screenshot, grainy but clear enough. Me in the conference room yesterday, sitting across from Ryan. His phone angled, lens glinting, the pen perfectly centered between us. At the bottom corner, a timestamp. Someone had access to the recordings, and they were sending them to me. I stuffed the photo back into the envelope, my palms sweating. If they had access, it meant either someone inside his circle was turning against him, or they wanted me to know just how deep the surveillance went. That afternoon, I tried to focus on spreadsheets, but every click of my mouse sounded like a gunshot in my ears. Every laugh in the hallway made me wonder if they were laughing at me. I checked my email compulsively, terrified another follow-up would arrive twisting words I hadn't said. By the time I drove home, exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. I parked in the driveway, shut off the engine, and sat in silence. The text, the pen, the photo, the 83 missed calls, it all connected, but the picture wasn't clear yet. I carried my bag inside and noticed something strange. The cookie tin where I'd hidden the chip wasn't in the cupboard. It sat on the counter, lid ajar. I froze. I lived alone. And suddenly I wasn't sure if the real danger was in the office or already inside my home. I didn't move for a full minute. The cookie tin sat on my counter, lid tilted like it had been interrupted mid-crime. I replayed last night. Cupboard, top shelf, tin tucked behind cake pans. I live alone. I don't have a cleaner. My landlord only enters for scheduled work, and there hadn't been any. I set my bag down quietly, as if the apartment might answer back. I checked the door. The chain was in place. The deadbolt turned cleanly, but the strike plate had a thin curl of metal shaved along the screw. Fresh, bright. I crouched and ran a finger over it. The scrape was new. I didn't call 911. I took photos. I put the pen, the chip, the tin, and the envelope from internal mail into separate zip bags, wrote the date and time in Sharpie, and dropped them in my freezer. A lawyer once told me cold, dry storage helps with latent prints and slows degradation. I don't know if that's true. It felt like doing something that wasn't panic. My phone lit the counter. Unknown again. I let it ring out. A text arrived. Don't call from home Wi-Fi. They monitor it. Monitor how? My ISP account is mine. Unless my router's default password? No, I changed it the week I moved in. Still, the text made the hair lift on my arms. I grabbed my keys and walked back out, locking the door like it could lock out the feeling. I drove to a cafe a few blocks away and sat where I could see both the entrance and the street. I switched off Wi-Fi, turned on data, and opened a new note. Everything that had happened, in order, in facts. Meeting setup, objects on table, his phrases, the follow-up email that put words in my mouth, the internal photo. I exported the note as a PDF and sent it to a new, clean email I created on the walk over. Then I printed the same list at the cafe kiosk, stapled it, and slid it into my bag. The message pinged again. If you summarize the meeting in an email, CC HR and your manager. Subject: clarification of yesterday's discussion. Only facts. No adjectives. I stared at the screen. Whoever this was, they knew corporate. Or they wanted me busy while someone else moved. Either way, the advice fit what my gut already said. Paper trail first. Feelings later. Back at the office the next morning, I wrote the email. I listed each question he'd asked, each answer I gave, the artifacts on the table, the phone's placement, his use of the word unsafe. I CC'd Helen in the HR general inbox. I attached my release note on version 4.2 and the security findings. I read it twice for adjectives, deleted the word smirk, and hit send. 10 minutes later, my calendar bloomed with a check-in from HR for the next day. No agenda, just the phrase supportive conversation. If you've worked long enough, you learn the vocabulary of ambush. Slack flashed on my screen. A message in our team channel posted from my account tagging the engineers. Ignore Ryan's timeline. We ship when I say so. The words stung because they were exactly the caricature he'd want. Power drunk, insubordinate, arrogant. I didn't type. I didn't delete. I took a screenshot, then another with the message hover showing the posting IP. I pinged Sam in IT, who owes me 3 favors and hates Ryan on principle. Me. Was my account accessed this morning? Sam. You on the exec floor Wi-Fi at 8:20? Me. No. 3 dots. Then, login token from boardroom guest. That SSID isn't public. Also odd, your session key was reset server side 5 minutes earlier. That's an admin action. Who's admin? He didn't answer for a beat. Originated from the network closet by the executive suite. You didn't hear that from me. I grabbed my notebook. Facts only. I wrote down the SSID, the time, the admin reset, Sam's exact phrases. My hands didn't shake this time. At noon, Helen appeared at my desk and asked if I had a minute. Her face looked like someone holding 2 truths they can't say out loud. We walked to a stairwell. No cameras, just concrete and the distant hum of vents. I can't advise you, she said softly, but document everything. And Lauren, don't be alone in meetings with him again. Why? She glanced at the door. Because I saw a draft of something I wasn't supposed to see. You're being positioned as non-collaborative and destabilizing. She swallowed. They're collecting. On what timeline? Soon. I nodded because there was nothing else to do that wouldn't make her part of the story she couldn't escape. On my way home that evening, the landlord called back. I told him about the strike plate and asked if any maintenance had been scheduled. He sounded genuinely confused. No vendors this week, Lauren. You're on a do not enter flag since March. He paused. You didn't give a key to your boyfriend? I don't have one. Okay. I'll pull the exterior camera. We only catch the stoop, not your door. An hour later, he texted a still image. A person in a generic maintenance jacket, head down, carrying a tote, entering the front door behind a resident who didn't look. No logo I recognized. The tote's side pocket held a slender pouch about the length of a pen. My phone buzzed again. The unknown number. Do not confront him or his father. Not yet. Bring the pen to a public place. Ask a chain pharmacy to bag it as a found item and staple the receipt to the bag. Then put that bag in your freezer. Why? I typed. Chain of custody. You need to be boringly credible. I followed the instructions. The pharmacy cashier didn't look twice. Back home, I slid the stapled bag beside the envelope of photos and shut the freezer like it could keep me from unraveling. My email pinged. A new invite from Ryan. Performance alignment. Mandatory. The location line read, Boardroom 4A. Recorded. Another text arrived, almost on top of it. You're not paranoid. Check the back of your router. I picked up the router like it was a sleeping animal. Dust ring on the shelf. 2 Ethernet cables, power brick, and, on the back, something I hadn't noticed before. A tiny USB stick with no logo, the kind of anonymous white plastic you buy in bulk. My stomach dropped. Most home routers have a USB port for storage or cellular backup. I'd never used mine. I didn't pull it out. I took photos from every angle, wrote the date on a sticky note and stuck it in the frame, then opened my laptop on mobile hotspot. Not Wi-Fi. I typed the router's local address, logged in, and opened the status page. There it was. USB WAN, active. A secondary internet connection, signal bars, a carrier name, remote management enabled. Log showing successful admin logins I hadn't made. My phone buzzed. Unknown. Don't disable it yet. Photograph every settings screen. System log. MAC lists. Then power the router off at the wall and bag the USB device. I did exactly that. Photos, screen recordings, a PDF printout of the system log. Then I powered the unit down, put on dish gloves, ridiculous, but it made me feel careful, and slid the USB stick into a fresh zip bag. I drove back to the same pharmacy, told the same board cashier I'd found it outside, and asked them to bag and staple a receipt again. Chain of custody for dummies. Back home, I put it in the freezer with the pen and the envelope. Sleep came in fragments. Every creak was a footstep, every car engine a watcher. I turned the router back on, but left Wi-Fi disabled and used my phone's hotspot. Paranoid? Maybe. But the little white stick had answered a bigger question. Whoever had been inside my apartment didn't just want to scare me. They wanted access. Quiet and constant. Morning brought the HR supportive conversation. I arrived early and asked Helen to walk me in. She hesitated in the doorway, then nodded and took a seat beside me. 2 HR people on the other side of the small table, smiling in the way people do when they're about to read from a script. We want to understand how best to support you, the lead said, then glanced at a folder with my name on it. We've received feedback about your style. I kept my hands flat. Before we begin, is this meeting investigatory or disciplinary? And is it being recorded? A flicker between them. No, not disciplinary, she said. And no, not recorded. Then I'd like a written agenda, I said, and to receive any allegations in writing so I can respond accurately. Also, I'll be taking notes, and I'll need a copy of anything you rely on. Another flicker. The second HR rep smiled tighter. This is just a check-in. Great, I said. Then I'll start by clarifying yesterday's discussion with Ryan. I handed over the email I'd sent, the release notes, the security findings for version 4.2. Fax only. Also, for your awareness, a device was left in a meeting. It appears to record audio. I've preserved it. They didn't touch the paper. We can route this through proper channels, the lead said. In the meantime, several colleagues have reported feeling unsafe raising ideas with you. Which colleagues? I asked. We don't disclose names. Then I'm asking for dates, incidents, and witnesses, I said. Specifics. I can't correct what I can't see. A pause. The second rep flipped a page. There was also a Slack message from your account instructing engineers to ignore leadership timelines. I saw that, I said. Here's a screenshot capturing the posting IP and a note from IT indicating my session key was reset from an admin console minutes before. I'm asking for an audit and to have my account placed on watch. Helen shifted beside me, the slightest movement, like a breath she could finally release. The lead HR rep took the paper this time. We'll look into it, she said. Please confirm in writing, I replied, and copy legal. Also, any future meetings about my performance should be scheduled with notice and a stated agenda. If we move into disciplinary territory, I'll need to bring counsel. They nodded, but their eyes said this wasn't the conversation they'd planned. When we stood, the second rep offered a soft olive branch. We appreciate your professionalism. It sounded like a line she believed, not one she was allowed to say aloud. Back at my desk, a calendar invite popped up from Ryan. Performance alignment, boardroom 4A, recorded. The description was empty. I declined with a single sentence. I'll attend once HR provides an agenda and confirms participants. Please send the recording policy and distribution process I CC'd HR. He replied within minutes. No need for HR, this is informal. Helen appeared at my chair, jaw set. Don't go, she said quietly. He's been doing one-on-ones without HR. People leave those meetings worse. I'm not going, I said. Not without a paper trail. My phone buzzed. Unknown. Good. Keep everything in email. If they insist, ask for a conference room with windows and a neutral HR recorder. Bring a witness. Own device off. Face down. Ask for a copy. Who are you? I typed. The dots pulsed, stopped, returned. Someone who lost more than a job here. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Whoever they weren't guessing. They were remembering. On my way home, the landlord texted another still image from the building cam. Same jacket, same tote, different day. The person followed a neighbor in again, head turned away from the lens. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I didn't want to be the kind of person who saw ghosts. I wanted the kind of evidence that made ghosts visible to everyone else. At home, I unplugged the router, put it and the power brick into a box, labeled it, and slid it into a closet. I set up a new travel hotspot I could shut off with a button and move my laptop to the kitchen table where I could see the front door. I wrote everything into a timeline, attached photos, logs, and receipts, and sent the bundle to a new folder labeled Counsel in my clean email. Then I drafted one more message. Short, factual, impossible to ignore. To Human Resources and Legal, a device resembling an audio recorder was introduced into a meeting by a senior employee. A separate cellular device was discovered attached to my home router. Both are preserved. Please advise on the company's policy regarding recording, remote access, and retaliation. I am willing to cooperate fully in an investigation. I hit send and watched the cursor blink, steady as a heartbeat. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't trust silence anymore. The reply from HR came faster than I expected. 2 lines. We acknowledge receipt of your concerns. Please do not discuss this matter further until we review internally. Translation. Stall. By then, I'd learned to read between the lines. HR didn't move quickly unless the CEO forced them. And Ryan was the CEO's son. If they were stalling, it meant he was still protected. For now. I didn't feel safe waiting. I couldn't sit in my apartment with freezer bags of evidence like a detective in exile. So I called a lawyer, a woman I found through a local employment advocacy group. I forwarded everything. The meeting notes, the pen, the router screenshots, the Slack hack, the HR exchange. She called me back within hours. Lauren, she said, calm but sharp. What you have isn't paranoia. It's retaliation. It's surveillance. It's grounds for both a civil claim and whistleblower protection. But first, you need to protect yourself from being fired before you can fight. How? Stay predictable. Attend work, document everything. And if you're pressured into a meeting again, ask to record it yourself. If they refuse, note it in writing. Don't raise your voice. Don't give them tape they can twist. I exhaled, a sound that felt like steel leaving my lungs. So I wait? You wait, she said, and then you strike in public. That night, my phone buzzed again with a text from the unknown number. You're not alone. We tried to warn you. Don't let him corner you. Watch for the Friday town hall. He'll go after you there. I froze. The town hall. Every quarter, the CEO gathered the whole company in the auditorium. Ryan had been edging closer to the spotlight, positioning himself as the heir. If he wanted to discredit me, what better stage than one with 300 witnesses? Friday came like a storm cloud. I walked into the auditorium, notebook in hand, phone in airplane mode. Ryan stood near the stage in a tailored suit, smile wide, voice loud enough to carry. My stomach knotted. The CEO spoke first, praising growth and resilience. Then Ryan took the microphone. He clicked to a slide titled, Culture of Resistance. My name appeared in a bullet point, highlighted in red. Gasps rippled through the rows. He launched into a speech about leadership, holding back innovation, about toxic resistance to change. He didn't say Lauren again, but everyone could see the slide. My pulse hammered. This was it. When he finished, the CEO clapped him on the back. Thank you, Ryan. Strong words. Then, almost as an afterthought, Lauren, do you want to respond? The spotlight swung like a blade. My legs shook as I walked to the front. I didn't take the mic. I pulled a folder from my bag and handed it to the moderator. These are logs, emails, and evidence of recording devices placed in meetings. I ask that they be displayed here so everyone can see the context. The moderator hesitated, but the CEO nodded, curious. The projector flickered. A photo appeared. Ryan's phone on the conference table, lens pointed at me, timestamp clear. Another slide. The Slack message tagged to my account with IT's note showing the login came from boardroom guest. Murmurs filled the air. I kept my voice steady. Facts, not adjectives. A recording device and a pen. Unauthorized access to my router. Messages sent from my account without my knowledge. Attempts to frame me as unsafe. All documented, preserved, and now filed with counsel, Ryan tried to laugh. This is ridiculous. But then Helen stood from her seat near the back. Her voice carried. I saw the draft. I saw the setup. She's telling the truth. Silence fell heavier than any gavel. The CEO's face tightened, red creeping up his neck. Ryan sputtered, but the screen behind him betrayed him more than I ever could. The whispers grew into a low roar, employees exchanging looks that said everything. The golden sun had crossed a line. I walked off the stage without waiting for applause. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new text. Now you've turned on the lights. Don't look back. That evening, HR called me in. The tone was different. They spoke of serious allegations, external counsel, and suspension pending investigation. Not mine, Ryan's. I answered their questions calmly, sticking to facts. My lawyer sat beside me, expression unreadable. By Monday, Ryan's name was off the org chart. The CEO issued a memo about protecting integrity and trust. It read like damage control, but it was the first acknowledgement that I wasn't invisible. At home, I pulled the frozen bags from the freezer and stacked them in a box for my lawyer. The evidence that had weighed me down was finally out of my hands. I poured tea, sat on the couch, and let the quiet settle. For the first time in weeks, silence felt like mine again. The message I wanted to hold on to wasn't about revenge, though part of me savored it. It was about survival. About not letting someone else write my story in edited clips and false accusations. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The truth needs receipts. And silence, when it's chosen, is power.